What's a stupid? What's pissing you off to start off the episode?
Oh man, nothing's pissing me off.
Hold on, I'm sure I can come up with something.
How much we care about so many things. Oh, wait, that doesn't make sense. I haven't thought about this. It's not going to be very eloquent, but
no, it doesn't need to be.
Essentially, as species, we seem to care about so many things that aren't worth caring about, and we bury our heads in the sand for things that really do matter.
Okay, I got 2 comments on this. One, whenever I ask you to come up with something, instead of something stupid, you come out with really profound stuff.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say really profound.
The last episode, you talked about how it bothers you how pessimistic people are in the world and how beautiful life is. Today, it's like we're worried about the wrong thing. Like these are very, and I'm like, tell me why.
Well, those things do well on TikTok, so tell me why.
I ain't nothing.
Okay, what's pissing you off?
No.
Sorry,
I have. Huh?
Well, what's annoying you?
I have follow-up questions. What should we be caring about in the world?
Well, we shouldn't be caring about Gary Lineker being on Match of the Day or not.
No.
That I can tell you.
Dude, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because why is the government responding to tweets? Tell me that. Why is the government responding to tweets? You have a country to run. And for the lack of a better term, you're clapping back on social media. Yeah,
but I mean, Donald Trump set the bar there.
I know.
Anyone who tweets less than him is just doing the bare minimum.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's just crazy. Everything's crazy. And part of me thinking Sunak and Jeremy Hunt getting in on the whole debate was just a distraction. Maybe from the budget that came out yesterday, from something else. I don't know.
It was not received well, that budget.
Well,
I don't understand money.
It just seems like they're getting involved in things that, they shouldn't really be involved in.
Okay.
Well, Gary Lineker took over the headlines?
Yeah. What should we care about as a society?
That's a good question. I mean, there's things that I think we should be caring about for society, but that might be different for someone else.
Ruler of the world, Ash Shah. What are we caring about here?
We should care about economics. Obviously, I'm going to say that. We should care about the wider environment. We seem to just care about our day to day. Oh, what am I earning? Where am I going? How are my investments doing? It's like, no, but what's influencing them? The macroeconomic environment. We should be caring about stuff like that. Yeah. Because that actually influences us. That changes stuff. And people are getting away with stuff that they shouldn't be. Yeah. The big banks, the big everything. But anyway, that's a whole debate.
Yeah. I stumbled across an interesting example of inflation, which makes it seem like something that's going to spiral out of control. But this is what I'm about to say is a dumb guy's perspective. Yeah. Please add a more financially literate person's.
I'm not. I'll try.
More than me, for sure.
I'll try and add my sprinkle.
So we were looking up. I was in a meeting, and the national minimum wage came up, right? And we got into a conversation about the national minimum wage being a decent enough number. Yeah. Right. Just as a number on its own, as an hourly rate, it's actually an okay number. Especially if you must have had a part-time job at some point when you were younger.
Yeah. I mean,
you weren't getting paid anywhere near what the minimum wage is now. But that minimum wage isn't necessarily enough to sustain a normal life. Right? And the thing about that is it's not a cycle. That's the problem. It's a line. And if you trace the line back, so everything gets more expensive. So the employee needs more money. And then they go to the employer and the government makes them pay the employee more. Okay? You with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay? That's absolutely fine. But the problem is the employer needs to recoup more money to pay the employee.
Right.
And if the employer sells stuff, usually they'll have to increase their prices.
Yeah.
And sorry, it's not a line, it's a cycle. They increase their prices, which makes things unaffordable for the next person. Yeah. And so the next person has to go to their employer and say, hey, I need more money because I can't afford bills.
And it's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. Suddenly that employer's like, well, I can't afford to pay you more unless I charge more. So I charge more. And it's this horrible cyclical process. Yeah. And I think that is fundamentally why I believe that the argument of pay isn't rising as quick as inflation is a problem.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the problem. That's a symptom.
Right.
That's a horrible, horrible symptom. And I sympathize a lot with people who suffer from that symptom and have that issue.
Yeah.
But that's not the disease. The disease is the fact that things are getting more expensive.
Yeah.
And my dumb perspective is, I can't, because I don't understand the macroeconomical, is that what it's?
Macroeconomic environment.
The macroeconomic environment. I don't know what the exit strategy is. How do we stop this horrible trajectory of people needing more money, demanding more money, and that's causing things to get more expensive? How do we fix this?
Well, we stop thinking that inflation is a necessity in the world.
Okay.
For years, we took the fact that, yes, you need a little bit of inflation. A little bit of inflation is good, 2%. Who came up with 2%? They asked a question to Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed chair, Federal Reserve chair in America, and they said 2%. Why 2%? Like, why not 3%, 4%? He couldn't give a straight answer.
Right.
He said that that's what other people benchmark as a good amount of inflation, and they've just stuck with it. Yeah. So we're here we're at 10% in the UK, 9-10%. We're here trying to get back to the 2% target. But why have we even decided or accepted that 2% is enough or right? And they think it's because it's just enough inflation that it doesn't annoy people, but it's something that allows the economy to keep easing.
Yeah.
The way we get out of it is to accept that inflation as anything above 0% is a disease.
It's bad.
Is a disease.
Yeah.
And that is not the result of a productive economy. Oh, it's productive, so we're going to get a bit of inflation. No, it's the fact we're expanding our money supply. That we should not do.
Okay.
Which we never did when we were on a gold standard. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, do you want to introduce the episode?
Yes, I think that would be good. Hey, welcome to episode... I do this every time.
56.
Hey, welcome to episode 56 of season 2.
No, 57.
No, it's 57.
Because the episode with Hassan Kuba hasn't come out yet.
Okay,
but
I'm going to do this again.
Yeah, sorry.
Is it 57 or are we doing episode number of season 2?
Season 2 episode. I have to
3?
look this up.
4?
It could be 4.
Wait, that's 52 in a year. So it's 5.
But the Hassan Kuba, this is just getting messy now, but the Hassan Kuba episode doesn't fall in this series.
Oh.
It's just, it uses the normal number. Season 2, episode 4. And by the way, if you watch the video I made of the intros, you'll realize 52 episodes, I didn't get a single one right. So hopefully that makes you feel a bit better.
Well, hopefully Ram is going to be nice and edit this a little bit. But anyway, we go. Was it episode 4?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome. I don't know why I'm being so...
Do it.
Hey, welcome to episode 4 of Director's Debrief, the Feel Good podcast. Yeah. Is that what we're calling it?
Do it.
We're still getting there, but hopefully by the end of this, by the end of the year, by the end of season 2, we will have an official name, but we'll see the evolutions we go on. Yeah. So for now, it's the Feel Good Podcast Inc. Something like that. Anyway,
next year we'll probably change the next season. Will probably be a different name.
But by the end of it, at least we would have figured out what this one was called.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. All right. Yeah.
So it's where we discuss all things about feeling good and what that really means, but what our advice, not advice, is to those out there who are looking to just live a better life. Yeah. Live things on their own terms.
Lessons we've learned, essentially, whether good, bad, or, just things that we've picked up lately.
Absolutely. And really, who are we to give out lessons? But we're going to give it a shot anyway.
Yeah. We're just here. We're not here to offer you a lesson. We're here to tell you about the lessons we've learned. If you take anything away from that, fantastic. If not, thanks for joining the ride. Whatever. We don't care about you. No.
So what's episode 4 about?
Episode 4. So episode 3 was about money. Episode 4 is kind of a continuation of that, or an expansion of that, where we kind of made a fair few assumptions that people know what money is. People know what investments are. People know what debt is. Yeah. The actual topic of this conversation came from Harvey, our warehouse manager, and we said, what's something you didn't know about that you wish you did, and just a couple of things that we've picked up along the way. We are. I would argue this. Maybe tell me if I'm wrong. I'd argue we're kind of privileged in some regards because of the access that we have, right? We have access to just a P&L, a business P&L. You recently revealed to me you check it every day. That was cool. When you told me that, I was like, damn, this guy
Yeah.
not letting anything slip. But we can log onto a computer and have a look at a business that's up and running, that's been running for a while. Look at the P&L. We have, you and I have had our bank accounts for years.
Yeah.
We have access to that information. We have had access to different things. So access to information is something we have.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that we might know that others might not know. I'm looking deeply at you here because I'm hoping you
Yeah, I
got
mean,
more
it's a
information
good
than
point.
me.
I mean, I hate to be the guy that says how privileged we are, putting the business aside or so on, but just the fact we have a bank account, right? Like,
Right.
To put it in perspective, that is of a percent of the world that has has a bank account, simply has access to a bank account. Most people can't because they don't have documentation.
Yeah.
They're not even registered as official citizens of countries, and there's so many that are unbanked in so many different countries. That they have no idea. So at least we have the privilege to understand where our money is or how it works, at least to a certain extent. But I think even us in the Western world or wherever it may be, we still don't understand it to the full extent.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to unravel today.
And bank account. I mean, we both have business credit cards, but do you have a personal credit card?
I do.
Yeah. So I've had a personal credit card for quite a long time. I've used it for very specific purposes throughout my time, usually to build credit scores. And some people might not know what a credit score is. So let's dive into that.
All right.
But can I? Oh,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What is a credit score?
What is a credit score? A credit score is a way of knowing how reliable you are at making financial repayments from a line of credit.
Right.
So a line of credit is money you don't have, a money that you're trusted with. Spend however you wish, usually with some terms and conditions, and then you repay it.
Right.
And your credit score is how good you are at that.
Okay.
And that's the reason why I describe it like that is a lot of people assume that you just have a good credit score automatically. No, you start off with an average credit score.
Right.
Borderline average. Clean slate. But if you want to get a mortgage years down the line, if you want to do any sort of large lending, whether it be personal or business, actually you need a bit of a track record. So taking out debt can be a good thing. That's actually one of the reasons why I have a credit card. I buy coffees and Ubers with my credit card and I pay it off immediately. So my credit card utilization is very low.
So when you say pay it off immediately, you got like a direct debit set up with your credit card?
No, I like to do it manually. I don't know why, but I just log in on...
just lump sum it.
Yeah, I get an email saying your bill is due.
Yeah.
You usually have a set period of time where you don't pay interest and then it starts to accrue.
Okay. Yeah.
So credit companies hate me because they don't make money off me.
Yeah, right. But they make money off plenty of other people.
I'm sure they've got their own way.
So let's take a deep dive there into the credit card.
Can we take a step back before that?
Sure.
Because there was something interesting. I've recently started learning about fractional banking. And
fractional reserve banking.
Fractional reserve banking.
Yeah.
And just a slight, we've talked about this before, but a slight history of money. Can you break that down as simply as possible?
Yeah,
how
sure.
money started, basically.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I love this a little bit, but I'll try and start really quickly and move through.
Yeah.
So essentially, money is a means of kind of information that helps us transact. That's how it all started. So we go back to the old days where I had cattle, you had corn, and we wanted to transact, but you didn't want cattle. And I wanted corn. How would we transact? Very difficult.
Yeah.
So for years, humans struggled to trade effectively, and it was very inefficient because it'd be really difficult. And it's a no-brainer now looking backwards, but at the time it was very difficult to find some kind of intermediary, the trusted intermediary as it goes.
There was a limitation there. We had to both have something each other desired. That was the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Exactly. Something that we could trade that showed that my cattle, my 8 cattle, are worth one piece of corn, which isn't the truth.
No, I'll give a full bag.
Right, exactly. So there needed to be something. So human civilization really started to expand and economically and really gain momentum when we figured out how to solve that issue, which is what we call money today. It started with a variety of different things in different countries or different regions of the world. I mean, glass beads in Africa to there was a limestone in a certain country and everyone owned a little bit of this major limestone that existed on on an island,
Yeah.
and you would own your share in that, and then I would carve my bit for you, and so on. But the
Right.
limestone wouldn't move.
Yeah.
I believe it's limestone or some kind of stone that they carved into. So there was all sorts of ideas.
Feathers
and
in one
it's-
country. I remember
Right.
reading about,
Yeah. So all sorts of things that people used. Quickly moved to ideas such as precious metals, being because they were scarce, so they couldn't be easily replicated, which was a big thing because glass beads, for example, is one of the big reasons why Europeans were able to conquer Africa. Because Europeans were not necessarily stronger than the Africans at the time that they were trying to invade in, but they knew how to make glass beads.
Wow.
And they counterfeited glass beads that the Africans valued so much that was very hard to mimic because they had technology in Europe. And they were able to kind of, get one village to turn against another because they had these.
So glass beads went through inflation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And through all areas of history, we've seen examples of that. Precious metals were one of the more difficult ones because you simply couldn't replicate gold, or you couldn't replicate silver, and so on. So for a period of history, much later into it, the Romans used this and so on. They used gold as a measure, and they even had a gold coin that they would do. Even that went through inflation at one point where they would essentially carve off little edges of the gold coin to make them worth a little bit less to kind of keep inflation into the economy. It's one of the, really fast tracking, but it's one of the things that they say led to the downfall of the Roman civilization, inflation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's a whole chapter on that. And I'm really skimming through, but essentially we learned to transact with certain coins and certain things. The biggest thing that happened, though, is the fact that moving a lot of gold around is difficult.
Yes.
It's okay for a gold coin, but what happens when I want to purchase land and, certain large purchases? It's very difficult. Yeah. So along came banks. Now, banks were this great formation or great technological advancement that essentially said, look, we'll hold your gold and we'll give you an IOU.
Yeah.
The IOU was the biggest technological advancement at the time because it essentially said, you don't need to move gold around. We're going to give you this. And it's going to allow you to transact very quickly. Yeah. Suddenly you can say, here's my 20 gold coins.
So ultimately the goal is, with this receipt, IOU, I can go claim my gold.
Exactly.
But instead now, when we transact, I give you the receipt and you can go claim the gold.
Exactly.
Right.
That's it. Because now I have rights to that gold in that bank. Cool. And that's why you have different banks. So say in America, you have Bank of America and Bank of Texas and so on. They made Bank of Texas made up, but essentially what it was is these banks housed differently, and you would have different IOUs for each bank, and people valued certain banks more because they were more trustworthy, whereas some banks didn't. In this case, I mean, there was one period where they would hold tobacco as an IOU and say, oh, this is your tobacco versus that, and then there was all sorts of things where people diluted the tobacco and so on. So you always have this issue with banks where trust comes into it.
Yeah.
Anyway. That goes on until, as always, we realize that humans can't be trusted. We're just not trustworthy.
Yeah.
Now there are good people. There are good people, plenty of good people. But on the whole, as a collective, we make decisions where we lose trust, right? And that just develops into it. So we need something that allows us to be honest and trustworthy. But what happened with banking is banks got hold of a lot of gold in their vaults and their deposits, and they realized, hold on a second, all we have to do is put an IOU to them and them. Why can't we give out a couple more IOUs for the same gold? Because they don't really claim it. No one ever asks for their gold out of it. They just want their IOUs to move around. And we can make a little bit more money. Of course they're going to, because they're suddenly lending out more than one piece of gold. And that's called fractional reserve banking. And people say, oh, how can they get away with it? But as long as everyone doesn't ask for the gold at the same time in physical format, which wasn't really happening because everyone trusted the bank, they'll never get caught. Unless there's a bank run.
Interesting question. Is that the reason why you can deposit loads of money instantly, but it takes a few days to withdraw all your money? Is it because they need to scramble to...
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to comment on the individual banks. They'll blame it on, processing time or so on. But I'm sure there is a part of The idea that they don't want people to withdraw immediately, or they don't want it all in one go, because at the end of the day, they start putting money into, you'd assume they're just holding your money. You put $1,000 into a bank, they're holding your £1,000 in a vault. That's not true.
No.
They're holding your digits on a screen, and they're also lending that out 5 times to other people.
Yeah.
And that does happen. It happens with every bank. Everyone knows that this is happening. And that is essentially where we are today. And that is how fractional reserve banking came to fruition.
Yeah.
Hey there. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. Don't forget to please subscribe, like, comment, do what you can do to keep supporting this channel and where we're going. But really appreciate you paying attention, and enjoy the rest of the episode. Does that help?
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah. So essentially, you put £1,000 in the bank. Somebody applies for a loan, and they're like, "Oh, well, I have this 1,000 from Sam. Here, take this 1,000. Make sure you pay me back."
Yeah.
And then someone else comes in for a loan, and they're like, "Huh, well, here you go. Here's 10,000.
Yeah.
It's the same 10,000. Here's 1,000. It's the same 1,000 that I put in. It's gone to 2 different people.
Yeah.
And this happens at scale, right? So it's not just people. It's like institutions. It's pensions, and it's things like that. It's all designed to grow money.
Yeah.
And that recently led to quite a big deal in the Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, this sort of thing has been happening all over the world for a while, in most major countries. Now, in less developed countries, when there's a bank run, the government can't really come in to bail them out. It happened in Argentina, and then the Argentinian peso, devalued massively because the governments came in to bail them out. There was all this hyperinflation scenario, and most major countries can't get away with this. Right. So you see this hyperinflation happening because they come in to step in to prevent the bank runs, or there is just a bank run. Yeah. So it's been happening in countries for years and years. Happened in Greece, I believe it was, in Europe back in 2008. And again, it's been happening for a little while. What happened in America is, again, I say the Western world, or the world that usually buries its head in the sand thinking they're safe from all of this turmoil, got a taste of what could really happen. And the fact that the money they placed in their Silicon Valley Bank, remember, these are businesses just not investing, so it's not their risky stuff, it's just them putting their deposits to pay for payroll, whatever they pay for, in a bank. Like, just as all businesses do, just as we do, you hold some in the bank. There was a bit of a bank run on that. It happened from one of the major investors, Peter Thiel, trying to withdraw his money. And the whole, he kind of, apparently there's loads of conspiracies as to why he did it, but essentially once he'd withdrawn his money, he made an announcement for everyone else to withdraw their money because he said it wasn't trusted. And over the weekend, this happened on a Thursday, and then it led to over the weekend where there was no, because banks are closed on the weekend, concern from all businesses as to what was going to happen. So it was a major worry.
Crazy. But let's move on to credit. Let's talk about the juicy stuff.
Just finishing off there. Essentially what happened is the government did bail them out. And everyone's money is safe, but essentially what the government have said is they will always step in now, and that means that the banks have no reason to act responsibly, and they've basically been given a bailout, as they always do, and that's now a concern that banks are now going to handle people's money even more irresponsibly until it all crumbles. But yes, credit. This all does intertwine though, and we get to that. So credit.
Keep talking.
Yeah, credit essentially on that side is credit's not a new thing that's happened. The idea behind it was that, certainly I look at businesses. Businesses may want to purchase something, piece of capital equipment, land, or something that they need, but unfortunately they can't put all the cash up front that they need for that because it takes a while for that to be paid back. So the idea of credit was created, using someone else's money, maybe a loan from a businessman or someone there to bring that into fruition on that side. So that's been going on for many, many years, hundreds, thousands of years in that respect. What does credit mean to you?
What does credit mean to you? You always come out with these.
It's really deep.
Real deep. Credit is something that has hurt me. It's something that saved me. It's something that I see as a tool in the future for my future. So I need to start preparing and building my credit score so I have access to these things. But essentially, to me, credit is how much money that isn't yours do you have access to.
Okay.
And you build that by proving on a smaller scale that I can pay debt off. Like I gave the example of a small credit card.
Yeah.
Super small limit. My credit card limit is £500. I spend, it's not a lot. It's not a small amount of money. It's just a small credit limit. I've heard of people with unlimited thousands. Mine's just 500 because I don't trust myself. But yeah, that's what credit is to me.
Okay, so let's take a look back a little bit. What do you feel is wrong with where we are with credit in the world at the moment?
It is being used as a tool. I know you'll agree with this because I'm using your idea, but putting my spin on it. It is being used as a tool to purchase things for the lack of patience rather than opportunity. So my example here is a opportunity is like a house or an asset, not a liability, as Robert Kiyosaki says. If you want to buy a house, it's going to take an incredibly long time to save up. Let's say an average house is 250,000. Let's just say that. It'll take a really long time to save up £250,000. And to some people, it might never be feasible to save up that much whilst you're living your regular life, paying rent and things like that. So to have access to £250,000 and pay it off monthly whilst you live in the house is great. It's a tool that you can build. But if you're, let's say it'll take you 2 or 3 months to buy something. What's something that you want to own? Let's say
Some trainers.
So they cost, let's say, £150. You could save £50 a month for 3 months and then go out and buy these trainers. But instead, somebody is offering you the opportunity to buy it right now. Instead of £50 a month, you pay £55 a month. And that's what I think is the issue with lending at the moment, because that's £15 arguably.
So why is that different from a house?
Because I think it's just time spans. You're only 3 months away from the shoes, and you're not really missing out on much in those 3 months, unless you're shoeless and broke. But a house, how long will it take to save up 250,000? That might be a lifetime for some people. So you might not have the opportunity to buy it, whereas a loan grants you that opportunity.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because it's interesting, and we'll get into why. But so why would someone want to buy a house when they can rent?
You might not. I've actually been looking into this a lot. I've mentioned on the podcast buying a property has been something that's been on my mind for a while, and I've been comparing and contrasting. A house is my sister described it to me as a high interest savings account, because some of it goes towards interest, but some of it goes towards actually paying off a loan, and that money kind of goes into a bit of a reserve, so to speak, for yourself to access later down the line. And properties increase in value. Sorry, what was your question?
No, so I'm just trying to understand why is credit okay for one thing?
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned time span, which is a very good way to look at it. I hadn't thought of myself. And then shoes and the trainer's idea is not maybe something you should be.
I can think of an outlier to every example I can think of, but the main thing I'm getting at here is you might have the income to justify the affordability, to contemplate the affordability of a house. You can contemplate the affordability of 250,000 if your monthly income meets the monthly repayments. But for something like a cheaper expense, a smaller scale expense, like expensive trainers, fashion, tech, things like that are essentially out of reach, but they've been made in reach.
Yeah,
I'm struggling to.
Yeah, I understand. I see where you're coming.
Like somebody on 40,000 a year can afford to buy a £40,000 car.
Yeah,
But like, to me, that maths doesn't make sense. And I'm starting to realize maybe some of this is coming out of my own prejudices, my own internal emotions and feelings and thoughts towards debt. I grew up in Sweden, where debt is notoriously frowned upon.
Sure.
In a Middle Eastern household, where again debt is notoriously frowned upon. So maybe I just have these a natural dislike for debt, unless it's completely necessary.
Yeah. I think there's a more fundamental reason. I don't want to get into this too much because, but we will.
Please do.
Because this is a feel good how to look at debt and so on. But we need to look at why debt has been encouraged in the first place by society and how we've even gotten to this position. Because for many generations, this wasn't just a Middle Eastern thought process. For pretty much any culture of anywhere, debt was always seen as a negative, right? Unless correctly leveraged, such as a house and so on, but that's in certain very careful, well thought out, multi-generational plans. You know, my kids will have this house in 3 generations time, or my kids will. But the shoes idea, no, that's for me. No, I'm going to get that. And I do think this came down to an environment, again, looking at the macroeconomic environment of a low interest place and environment where interest rates have been suppressed manually by the central banks for so long, and they're nowhere near the actual rate of credit we should be paying. Okay. So essentially
Is that a bad thing?
Yes.
Is cheap debt a bad thing, and why?
Well, the idea here is cheap debt was brought in to encourage consumption.
Right.
So this was brought in 2008. It's been brought in before, where the idea is let's lower interest rates to encourage consumption. They say it's for business investment. Of course, business investment increases, but it encourages consumption. Yeah. And there's a Keynesian, so John Maynard Keynes, Milton Keynes was named after him. Yeah. He is on the thought process of consumption at all costs. Consume, that's what gets the economy going. And I'm definitely not on his thought process, that we are in a period where we're over-consuming on things we don't need, and this isn't genuine economic productivity. So what's happened is, say I'm going to buy a sofa, right? Some people say sofa's necessary. I go into the store and I'm told that I can either pay £1,000 today for the sofa set, whatever it is, or I can pay this 0% interest-free over the next 2 years. When I know my inflation is going up, why would I want to put my money up front when I could be paying this over the next 2 years? I'm actually doing myself a disservice. Yeah. But if I was actually paying the correct interest rate that should be going on in the environment, which is, they say it should be around inflation rate, so about 10%. Yeah. Do I want to pay 10% year on year on that £1,000 that I put initially up front? No, I don't. No. So what we're essentially seeing here is we're seeing a very disjointed world where credit isn't actually the way it should be operating.
So credit... Wow. So interest being in line with inflation would mean your £1,000 that you're spending today, in a year's time, once you've finished paying off the loan, you've parted ways with the same amount of money value-wise, not numerically, but value-wise, as you would have done a year ago.
Exactly.
However, what's happened here is if you take 0% interest, you've done the business a disservice almost. Yeah. Because they're getting 1,000 of your hard-earned pounds, but they're worth less than what they would have done if you'd have paid it up front.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see a huge disconnection there now.
And that's the difficulty. So whilst I'm so against debt and credit and this idea of it, when I go to purchase a sofa, I'm doing myself a disservice by not taking the 0% over 2 years thing. And that's the difficult part for me, because whilst I really do hate that idea, we're being encouraged so much that I'm genuinely losing out on value, that we're going that way. And I think obviously we've digressed slightly there, but essentially the world has put us in that position where we're being encouraged so much to buy things we don't need. Maybe I didn't need to spend £1,000 on a sofa, but I did because I could spread it over 2 years. Yeah. Maybe I just needed the £300 sofa. And that's really where we are at the moment in that sense. So yeah, that's essentially where we are at the moment. Yeah. And we're in a point where, yes, the previous generations hated debt, But even then, I see my dad now contemplating, well, it's a bit of a no-brainer to go for 0%. And he would never, in his wildest dreams, have ever contemplated it. He never wants to put himself anywhere near debt or anything like that. It's just something that is so taboo. Yeah. But it actually becomes poor business sense or poor personal finance sense when you're not looking at these kinds of those ideas. And essentially it's encouraging, because of that, a world where we just rely on debt. Oh, why pay now when I could pay later? And we're continuously consuming and continuously creating more debt. Some will pay it back, a lot won't. Yeah. And it's just a house of cards waiting to fall. Yeah.
And the education around all of this is very bad. I would just say that up front, around finances, economics in general. Like I said, fractional reserve banking, I think I learned about 2 weeks ago. I think I only really even learned that how money worked, how it was attached to gold and how it was an IOU. I only learned that like 2 years ago. I came up to you and went, Ash, is this real? Is this what happens?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm alone in that.
Honestly, I learned this, about 2 or 3 years ago as well.
Yeah.
I was unaware. You'll ask a few people, you go on the street and say, do you think money's backed? Do you think the pound is backed? Yeah, it's backed by silver or something. No. That stopped many years ago. Yeah.
And the other crazy thing is when we're talking about Don't Pay UK, which is this campaign that, people feel like they've got nothing left to lose anymore. But it's always a tool in the government's arsenal where they're like, we're just not going to pay. And like, well, it will ruin your credit score. And people are like, well, that doesn't matter to me anymore. It will. Like years down the line. Hopefully, financial ruts don't last forever for people. Yeah. Hopefully people come out of this. And when they do, they should have the opportunity to build on top of that, like purchase a house like that. And so I think it is quite short-term thinking of like, oh, it doesn't even matter anymore. Credit score doesn't even matter.
Yeah, you're definitely right. The education piece is a massive blind spot at the moment. And with that, I think what people need to also realize, so we're speaking to Harvey, and one of his questions was, how do I leverage my money better, my credit better? How do I maximize my investment? And I think people get into the rut, and I'll maybe blame this on TikTok, of the TikTok idea of leverage your credit, go hard on stocks and shares and leverage that 5 times, or buy investments and leverage your own personal credit. They make it look all too easy. Yeah. And they put a lot of people's genuine, good personal credit on the line. There's a difference, and I think generally, unless you're fully financially educated on that, you really do need to be careful on leveraging your personal finance to such an extent. But that's just a side thought.
Yeah. I mean, there is this feeling, and I'm going to explain a real version, and I'm going to explain how this feeling is being simulated in finances. There's a huge scandal in motorsport, esports at the moment, right, of people pushing the boundaries of like the racetrack, because you can gain advantage if you go off the track a little bit here. And one of the justifications from the competitors for doing this was, look, if I don't do it, the other 19 competitors will do it and they'll win. And I'm just at the back there playing legit and I'm losing. Like, I'm just playing it safe, but I'll just lose. So what's the point in that? So I might as well push the boundaries myself.
Right.
And I think that's the real issue. That's a real issue. A simulation of seeing all these TikToks is you start to feel like saving money is a bad idea. And you think that actually I'm being safe by saving my money. And everyone around me is investing. You get this feeling. I know so many people who talk about investments but don't actually invest.
Right.
And you get this FOMO almost of investment, of like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. When in reality, you're a couple grand in debt or something. Like you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole whilst trying to build a competitive advantage.
Right.
But you see all of these TikTokers like, oh, I invested 10,000 in the S&P 500, yada yada.
And you almost want to jump from there straight to
almost, yeah. But like, how do you? That's not.
Yeah. Really so what's your advice to maybe those people in a couple of grand of debt?
Yeah.
It's obviously not follow the TikTokers.
No. I mean, a lot of people that I've sort of followed, this is a really good question. Where can you get access to good information and resources? I followed a few people, and I've learned a lot from a few people. Ramit Sethi, whose name I forgot on the podcast, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I love his concept of focus on the big easy wins and then move on to the smaller ones. So he uses an example of you're trying to dig yourself out of a financial rut by saving on lattes. That's not going to happen. But in actual fact, a couple phone calls, you can get a bill waived or you can get something reduced. I love that concept.
Yeah.
When that happened, I looked at the finance on my car. I'd taken out a loan to buy my car. And I was thinking if I save on, 3 coffees a week, I would get, what would you make back? £100, whatever.
Right.
But actually, I realized I was making a bit more money, so I called up my loan provider and I said, if I shorten my my loan from 18 months left, if I shortened it to 12 months left, how much interest would I save? And they said like £300. I was like, boom, I've saved £300.
Yeah, so 100 lattes.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100 lattes.
Yeah.
That's a third of the year if you buy a latte every day.
Yeah.
You can for a third of the year, you can buy a latte every single day if you make one phone call. So focus on big, easy wins. Everything in this world is negotiable. I found out my bank Santander were charging me £80 a month in overdraft fees.
Okay.
But I thought I had an overdraft-free account. And what had happened is I'd graduated uni, and they just changed my account from a student account to a normal one. £80 a month fees.
Unbelievable.
I called them and I was like, guys, and it doesn't come up on your statement. It doesn't come up on your transactions.
Right.
It's on the front page, and I don't check that. I just check the app. So I was like, I have no idea. You guys don't put this in the transaction minus whatever. They do now, maybe because I complained.
Okay.
But they didn't do that before. And they said, oh, we're really sorry about that. We thought you were aware. We're going to refund you the past 4 months. Please don't do it again. It's like, it's £300 in my account. Like that. So read Ramit Sethi's I'll Teach You to Be Rich. And then Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad is a good idea, is a good resource. But like last episode, the best way to get out of debt is to put money in a place where you can't touch it.
Okay.
And that can be as small or as big as you like. And remember, no one's coming to save you. If you don't start getting out of debt now, in a year's time, you're going to be in exactly the same amount of debt, if not more. But if you save £50 a month, at the end of the year, you have £600. And you're like, oh, what if your debt is like £6,000? You're like, I barely made a dent.
Yeah.
What is that, 10%? I haven't done anything. Well, yeah, but you're 10% further along than you were at the start of the year.
Right.
Next year, you'll be 20%. The year after that, you'll be 30. And these are small steps. And yes, it seems impossible. But if you just ignore it, then you're in the same position. But no, now you're actually making headway.
It's a brilliant way of looking at it. Yeah.
It's too. I've spoken to so many people who have made poor financial decisions, because I did that and I was looking around for advice, who kind of very much like me, just expected the situation to resolve itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very easy mentality.
Is that like a handout or just
anything,
a magic
dude.
wand? Yeah.
Just go to sleep and forget about it. Bury your head in the sand, as you said. And, because sometimes you get like a bonus at work, right? Say you're £5,000 in debt, you get a £1,000 bonus, and you're like, all right, that's good, yeah. And then you spend the £1,000. And you're like, oh, there'll be another handout, or there'll be another bonus, or there'll be another thing. And they rarely come, to be honest. Like, they do come, but you don't actually use it.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the feeling of £1,000 in their bank account and then not having it.
Right.
But they forget that they've spent that money already.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. But feel good series and whatnot. Let's talk about good debt.
Yeah.
How do you leverage good debt? Yeah, how? Teach me, please. If you've made it this far and you've ignored Ash's request to subscribe, please don't ignore this one. Please subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and it helps us grow and hopefully gives us more information to pass on to you. Thanks.
Honestly, I'll be there. This is something I'm still trying to figure out myself.
Yeah, me too. Actually,
I would not come on here saying I'm some pro leveraging good debt. I struggle to find many options of good debt.
Yeah. Have you seen somebody utilize debt well in the past, and you thought that's smart?
Yeah. So I mean, even for example we made earlier, right? Leveraging debt is leveraging the system at the moment. It's not leveraging maybe debt in the future when things stop being the way they are. Yeah. But at the moment, we have very low interest rates, or fairly low, respectively. And there's a difference. There's a difference between what your investments may be producing and what the current borrowing rates are and so on. And it's kind of trying to find that arbitrage a little bit and figuring that out from there. So for example, why should I put my hard-earned cash here when I can have 0% over the next few years? I could make that £1,000 and put it into an easy access savings account where it's going to be 2%.
Yeah.
Boom. Easy way of leveraging debt. It doesn't have to be some crazy master plan of investing all your capital into a commercial property or something like that. It could just be some simple decisions that you're making. I mean, car financing. Some people again will say, I don't agree with car financing or PCP. Take a look at it. If you do your hard work and you don't go for the first PCP thing that Mercedes-Benz or BMW offer you, and you look at maybe the idea of a supermarket car loan or something like this, it's looking at the fact that, okay, a PCP's whatever percent, a car loan is maybe 4 or 5%, maybe in this environment, it might be a bit different. I could get X return on my investment. So rather than putting my 30K into a car, I'm going to do it through a car loan, and I'm going to invest my money into a property or into an investment fund or something like that. Looking at different investment opportunities. That's the idea. It's looking at the opportunity cost of your money and saying, okay, maybe I don't need to plow this into here. I'm going to put it somewhere else and make it work for me. And it could be on a micro scale or a smaller scale, the sofa, all the way through. That's kind of my thought process.
I just remember one time I worked as, I'm going to leave all personal details obviously out of this, so I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but let's find out. I worked at a finance company. We had to review some applications for loans, and we had to overlook somebody's property holdings. And they had 6 properties, and all of them were on interest-only loans, which to me made no sense, right? You want to be paying the principal, the house stuff. But all of these houses were rented out, and the mortgage came out to about £300 a month, just interest only. And the rental income he was getting out of each one was £800.
Right.
Times that across 6, it's a very healthy income stream. I don't really know what happens at the end of the mortgage. I guess he sells the house and he makes none of the principal, obviously. The banks made their money. But I just thought that was like a smart way of leveraging debt. And he must have had some sort of way of building that credit score in order to convince a bank to lend him 6 times whatever. He must have had some sort of securities or something like that. But that was just a smart
interest only was a very popular thing in the last 10 years because of the low interest environment. So you could actually make that difference. And also the fact that there was an expectation properties would go up in price. Right. Because you have to expect them to go up in price. If properties don't, which can happen, I mean, we're in a market now that's a bit funny. If you're continuously just paying off the interest and you buy a £200,000 property and your mortgage, you pay a down payment of 40K. Say you're just paying off the interest. That means in a few years, if that property is worth 180,000, you've still got to fork out and pay that initial £200,000 back. And if you're selling the property at 180,000, that means you have to recoup or find the extra 20,000 from somewhere. So it's fine. I've looked at it and so on, but again, it's just being smart and understanding the risks behind certain things like that. And you always have the expectation things will go one way until they don't. Like no one expected interest rates to rise so dramatically until they did.
Assuming somebody has, doesn't have a lot of debt, is in a relatively secure and stable financial position, and they're contemplating buying a house. This is something that I have no experience of actually buying property, but I have some experience of building myself up to. So this is a few things that I've learned in the past few years that might help somebody. One, registering on the electoral roll is really, really useful. It jacks up your score really, really quickly. Having a series of small loans not loans, but like a credit card. Again, don't trust yourself with it. Just make loads of small purchases like a coffee or Ubers and then pay them off immediately.
Keep on top of it.
Overdraft means nothing. Overdraft does not impact your credit score whatsoever. Which is a good and bad thing because people might go into the overdraft thinking there's no consequences for these actions. They still expect that money back. Rude of them, but they do. Staying with the same bank and in the same property. If you move a lot, you're deemed unstable. And if you stay with the same bank, again, you're deemed sort of reliable and stable. And the best tool I've found for this is ClearScore. I don't know if you have a ClearScore account. I had it when they first launched because I just wanted to know my credit score. Actually, I did it to check my score because I was about to make a bad financial decision. I wanted to get a MacBook on finance. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So I decided to check my score before I applied, and I've just had an account ever since. I didn't in the end, but I checked.
Is that an account you have to pay for?
No, it's free.
Oh, right. Okay,
ClearScore is incredible.
Yeah.
It's free. I know Equifax and those other
Experian.
two.
So on.
Yeah, you have to pay for those. ClearScore is great because it gives you your credit score. There's a difference. There's a difference between your credit rating and your credit score.
Right.
One is official and one's an indication.
Okay.
I can't remember which is which. I think your credit score. Is what the government and lenders use.
Okay.
It's official. It's an official record. Your credit rating, it gives you an inclination. It's like if you have a good rating, chances are you have a good score. And the reason for that as well is the last bit of advice I have is don't apply to loads of debt. Applying to debt has quite significant consequences.
Sure.
If you do what's called a hard search, like I want to find out if I can afford this BMW, if you go through the full credit application, then they log that you've done a hard search. That's why you see on some applications it's a soft search or a hard search. Soft search is fine, do as many of them as you like. But a hard search, it deeply impacts. If you do 2 or 3 in the span of a couple of months, you see a huge dip. Yeah, because they're like, oh, this guy's credit hungry.
Or it may show that other people are looking through your credit score, but they're not lending to you.
Yeah.
And so on. Yeah.
Exactly.
In that respect. That's so interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind talking about the process of buying a house?
Yeah, sure.
This is something that seems wildly out of, the access to information on this seems wildly out of reach. So can I just ask you some questions that I had?
Yeah.
Where does that process start? Let's say you've saved up, what's a good amount? 10% of a deposit?
Yeah, I mean, you can go anywhere from I believe 5% all the way to 25%.
Right.
I mean, people may go more, but that's usually the batting average. Obviously, your repayments and your interest rate will vary on the amount you're willing to put up front.
Of course.
Because that increases the bank's risk. If you're only putting 5% up front, then the banks will suddenly look at that and say, okay, this person's not that incentivized or into the property to it.
Yeah.
But on the same token, then you have to part away with more cash, which is, again, something you need to think about. And really, what is the rate in difference? It's good to figure that out. So where I would start and always start is get yourself a good mortgage broker or get someone like that. I know there's plenty of websites and things like that, but get some good advice, professional advice.
Plenty of banks want you to go to them for the mortgage. So if you bank with Santander, for example, they will want you to go to them. And sometimes there is an advantage to that, I've heard.
Yeah.
But I've actually heard that sometimes going to a different bank or a broker can get you a better deal.
Yeah, I think sometimes everyone's in their own position. Everyone's earning differently. Everyone has their own assets or whatever they have, how much they're willing to put up front and so on. So going to a broker just gives you a bit more idea of what's going on in the market and what's available. Now, you may say, I didn't know you could put less than 10% down. And then a mortgage broker may say, I mean, you'll pay 1% more in your mortgage, but these are the bond benefits and so on. And it's good to get that. And I think going to just one bank limits you. There's no harm in going to that, taking that meeting with your local. If you bank with Santander, take a meeting with Santander as well. Why not? Get as much information as you can, but go to some advisors and go to someone who's been recommended. Right. Don't just Google the first mortgage advisor, because there are some naff ones out there and there's some amazing ones out there.
Okay.
And yeah, that's really crucial. So you go to them, have a chat. In the meantime, already have your idea on a few potential properties that are in mind, so that you can go to them and say, can I afford this or can I not? Treat them as you're a bit of a personal finance manager, where they say, no, this is a bit out of your reach, or it's going to cost you X amount. Yeah. So have a bit of a variety, or at least have an idea of what you would like to borrow. Okay. So I'd like to borrow 200K, for example, or whatever it is, and get that idea in mind.
So then what happens next? You have 20 grand for the 200K house. You think 10%, the mortgage broker tells you 10% is a good amount. Yeah. What happens next? You get a mortgage in principle, or do you start viewing some properties? What comes first?
So I would always recommend to view some properties first.
Okay.
Just as an initial thing. You can get your mortgage in principle there, but the issue there is it has a bit of a time to it. And if you haven't started looking at some properties that might be of interest, it's a bit of a concern. Yeah.
How certain is a mortgage? For people who don't know, mortgage in principle is just a document that says this person can get this much money.
Yeah.
Is that certain? Is that like this mortgage in principle is like this person can definitely have 200k if they need it?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I can find that out,
Okay.
but I don't want to give the wrong information there.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's what say you're buying a new build, it's what the developers would want to see to get you to the next stage, to put the reservation fee and so on down.
Cool.
So it's good to have a bit of both going on, but I'd really just recommend having a look at some properties, especially in this market at the moment. It's not it's a buyer's market.
Yeah.
So you have time on your side. You are a rarity, whereas buying a couple of years ago, back in 2021, 2020, you didn't have time.
I heard that realtors weren't even showing people properties unless they could present a mortgage in principle.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
how, because so many people wanted to buy.
Exactly, and they didn't want to waste their time.
Yeah.
They were minting money. They're not now. So time is on your side,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of room for negotiation. So you want to take time to look at all of that, negotiate. Again, they might ask for a mortgage in principle before negotiation. You can give them something or have someone on the side ready to go. But I'd certainly say have a look at what you're interested in first and go from there. Then, go through your mortgage advisor, have a look at the rates that are going on at the moment, because things are a little bit higher, but they're not too high. They're not crazy. So it's still within reach and it's still good. And then and work from there. And then it's really about putting your reservation down, or depending on what kind of property it is, and getting your solicitors involved as the next step.
I think by then you'll have access to the information. That's the first part is always so hard because people don't know where to start. And then some people get the inclination that they should start by saving some money.
Right.
So then they start saving some money and then they're like, well, what do I do with this money? So I think what you've offered has been really valuable because it will get people to speak to a mortgage broker, find a mortgage in principle, start viewing some properties. By then you're in the atmosphere, right? You're in the environment.
Yeah.
And when wheels are moving, it's a lot easier to gain momentum. You're speaking to a mortgage broker. So if you're like, well, I don't know what happens next, well, you can speak to your mortgage broker or your real estate agent or whatever. So
I'm always just get professional advice.
Yeah.
It costs a little bit. Yes, you'll pay a little bit for a better solicitor.
Yeah.
It makes sense because things are done properly by the book. You'll always think, oh, maybe I can save a couple £100 if I don't use that, all that. Yeah, I'm not saying use every bit of professional advice out there, but bring in the pros when you need them.
Yeah.
Because stay in your lane, they stay in theirs, is the kind of thing. And also, don't hesitate. Don't be lazy with your research. That's on properties. That's on information. Sometimes it can be like, I just can't be bothered. It could save you money, serious money.
Well, here's the thing. The one thing that has been drilled into me recently is this is usually around a 25-year commitment, which means anything that is any monthly increase in cost, times it by 12, then times it by 25. Then you have a true picture of what it's costing.
Wow, yeah.
Right? Because that's what blows my mind. If you go for a car loan and you're comparing two cars and like you like the car, but the finance there is like 1% more expensive.
Yeah.
That's not good, but ultimately, if you're getting a car that you desire more, by the end of it, you will have paid £300 more maybe on your finance, £400. If it's a house, then suddenly you're talking £5,000, £10,000, because again, you're paying this on a monthly basis. £10 a month suddenly becomes £1,200 a year. Suddenly becomes 25 grand. Well, I rounded.
Yeah, no, but absolutely, that's exactly it. So yeah, it's definitely something to think about. But it's an exciting part of time as well for those that are looking for properties and so on. And it's important to do that. Just some tips on outside of the credit side of things.
Yeah.
Don't fall in love with a property.
Okay.
Is my bit of advice, because when you do, it makes negotiating really, really hard. I mean, I'm sure you've all heard it when you're buying a car or anything like that. Don't fall in love with it. Yeah. But it really means a lot when you're in a property. Like almost feel to yourself like you don't need it. It needs you.
Nice.
And negotiate hard.
Yeah.
Because if I obviously purchased a property a couple of years ago, last year.
It's like, has it been that quick?
Feels that long. It wasn't a buyer's market, now is, and that's one thing I would really, really go hard for. I mean, even in the non-buyer's market, we managed to do very well in getting some good money off. I know you could do a lot more in this market, so. Negotiate hard, bring your skills, do your research on comparative properties that you can bring to the table to them and say, this is what I'm being offered elsewhere. you could save a lot, thousands and thousands. Yeah, so that's where I'd go.
I think we should end the episode, but I just want to end something on that note. Where you said, do your research and bring other opportunities, with you, and say, well, actually your house, I'm assuming this is what you mean. Like, this house is 200K. This is a similar spec house for 180, whatever. Like, leverage that to try and get that.
Yeah.
When I was 15, my dad was selling his car. It was a Toyota Corolla. So, probably a Corolla or something like that. That doesn't matter. And somebody had come to see the car. And my dad doesn't speak English, so I help him when he sells the car.
Yeah.
And usually he likes to let me loose a little, you negotiate what the final price is. So I was young, and I was really young looking at the time. Puberty hit me like a train across a week. I grew a beard and 6 foot, but I looked like a kid back then. So the guys knew that they were negotiating with me, but they were negotiating with a kid. But he pulled out this Auto Trader ad for a very similarly spec'd car. And I was too young to know that this is quite a cheeky thing to say, but he said to me, he was like, but look, this one is this price, so surely you can sell me this car for that price. And I just went, no, go buy that one if you want to pay that much. I told him to go buy that car, and he goes, no, I'm here already, and stuff like that. We negotiated back and forth for ages, and at the last minute, he shortchanged us. He gave us £50 less. And I was like, you're missing £50. And he went, well, yeah, but I need it for fuel. And I was just like, yeah, but it's your car now. You got to pay for fuel. Give me my £50. And he looked at my dad and he goes, you've trained him well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having don't bring a slip. I don't know if houses are different, but don't bring a piece of paper that says this house is that, because they might say to you, just go buy that one. But maybe bring an idea of, I have an idea. I think that the market is worth this much because I've seen other properties at this price. Would you say that makes sense?
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in giving a direct comparison, because sometimes, they may say go buy that one, but they won't as well. Or most cases they won't, because unless it's drastically off, or they genuinely think their build quality is better or whatnot. If you as long as you're fair and you bring a comparative property to market, yes, they may try and fob you off with a bit of build quality and so on, but it shows you have actually done your research and you're not just trying to get a cheeky discount. And
and you're letting them know, by the way, don't pull wool over my eyes.
This is it. Whereas there will be people saying, oh, I think in this market around here, there's properties that are about £20,000 less. You're just trying to have one on, and you've got no intention of looking elsewhere. Whereas what you've done is you've shown, actually, I'm looking elsewhere. But you give them a little bit of positive, saying, I appreciate your build quality is there, so I know you're probably not going to be at this point, but the difference is too much, and I feel like this is much overvalued. Conversations like that, there's no harm. And I wouldn't be afraid to show you've done your research. That's good.
I just want to end off on a couple of good resources I found when it comes to money. I'm curious if you have any. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Can I just ask you on that? It's been 8 years since I've read that book.
About the same for me.
What do you remember about it that stuck with you?
A couple things. One, buy assets, not liabilities. Assets are things that make you money. Liabilities are things that cost you money.
Okay.
And a house is a really good example of that. A house that you buy to rent out is an asset. A house that you buy to live in is a liability. But that's okay. Some liabilities are okay in that regard. Liabilities are funded by assets, because people want liabilities. A liability is like a fancy car. But he talks about his wife wanting to buy a Porsche. So the Porsche was like $100,000, and she bought like a flat for about $100,000. So she spent her cash on that, and then the monthly repayments from that flat pay the monthly repayments on the car. So the asset pays for the liability.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So that's what I think. And the other thing is, like, the one lesson, if there's one lesson you take away from that book, is a job is a very temporary solution to a very permanent problem. He says that in the book, and that stayed with me.
A job is a very
temporary solution to a very permanent problem.
Interesting.
The permanent problem is you'll always need money. But a job you can only do for as long as your body or mind is willing and able.
That's so interesting.
And I think a lot of people are talking about multiple streams of income, side hustles, things like that. And I understand that, but I think what he's more getting at is if you make $3,000 a month today, whatever, if your take home is $3,000 a month today, don't assume that goes on forever. Don't assume that you get that until you die. You don't. You get that as long as you can do the job.
So make sure you do what you can with that.
Whether that's old school, build a pension so that you can live off a pension, whether that's invest in enough assets to pay you off, whatever it is, just remember, a job is a very temporary solution to a permanent problem. It's a very good temporary solution. It's really effective.
Yeah.
Just don't make the assumption that it's going to be there when you're no longer physically able to work. I think that's the default setting.
Fantastic.
So that's what I took away from that book. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi is a really good one. Ali Abdaal. Follow Ali Abdaal on YouTube, for the love of God. And I love this guy because he is so open about his finances. At the end of every year, he does a annual summary of all of his money, what he took in, what he took out. He did one on LinkedIn on his business, and I shared it with you. And he's... I think some people will definitely take that the wrong way, because he did one after the pandemic, and he always puts a prerequisite, like a section in the beginning, like, guys, I know that this seems like I'm flexing. I understand that some people went through hardships, and I'm about to tell you about the millions that I've made this year. I understand that that's what it might come across as. But he also says, like, I also understand what it's like to grow up without understanding what healthy cash flow looks like. I've never seen what good money management looks like. So now that I have access to it, I'm sharing it. And I admire that so much. I really do. Because, similar situation. I grew up, I didn't realize what good money allocation was. I didn't realize what to do with the money coming in, or how much money coming in is good. What is a good salary? I don't really know.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's just so open with it. He's a big fan of Bitcoin too. But he's just really open about it, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think everybody has to be, but we should definitely, be really grateful for those who are. So Ali Abdaal's really good in that regard too.
Fantastic. All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No. Any good resources from you? I know you use Twitter a lot to learn about, like, the finance world, but not necessarily like money lessons. Where would you say?
Yeah, I mean, if this is going to sound anywhere and everywhere, Google everything. It's out there. I think it's just whether you're willing to put in the work to find it, because all the information is out there. Anything, if you want to talk about mortgages, if you want to talk about cash flow, there's the first 10 articles on Google, or the first 10 blog posts are perfect. Just get in there and actually just put in the work to figure it out. Because otherwise you'll be in that continuous rut of just thinking, this isn't for me.
Whatever you don't know, somebody does, and you have access to that person.
And there's so many good, easy how to do YouTube videos that just explain everything super easy. So that would be where I'd leave it.
Solid.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you for watching. Tune in next time.
Yeah. Cheers.